Yes, my name is Cliff Purvis, former British Army Corporal. I did 24 years in the Army, 14 years with the Queens Own Highlanders and 10 years with the Royal Army Medical Corps.
Are you happy talking a little bit about your background prior to joining the military? What were you like as a kid?
Tear away. Yeah, we got used to get up to what we thought was really devilment, but was none at all. I had fields on one side of the house and the Thurso Bay not too far down the road as well, so it was messing about in water or messing about in the fields and chased by farmers.
So, what made you join the army then?
Basically, I had no other option. No, I wasn't the most astute of kids at school. And when it came time to leave school, I didn't really have much chance of getting a job locally. So the military was the get out. My father served 25 years. He joined the army at Edinburgh Castle, joined the Royal Signal Corps, and that was before the Second World War. And fought his way through the Second World War and ended up in Germany 54, I think, or something like that. He used to tell snippets of what he was up to, and one of the things I've done since his passing is get hold of his army records, and I've found out a lot more detail to the snippets he used to do. I mean, I knew he had been in Burma. He was a Burma Star holder. I knew he had been at Tobruk with the Australians. He had the Anzac Medal for that one. And he had the paperwork with it as well. So yeah, I got some backstory on that. And he'd been in Tobruk defending that, and then they were moved to Crete, just long enough for the German paratroopers to land and oust them off of Crete. And he made it back to the evacuation beach on the south side of the island, got on a boat and was promptly torpedoed. But he then made it safely back to Alexandria and then off out to India.
So you did your basic training at the Bridge of Dawn Infantry Barracks. Can you tell us about your time in basic training, both the physical side and the mental side?
Mental side, big awakening. Yeah, getting up at set times, making the bed with the bed blocks and making sure the room was immaculate, shiny floors. Our lockers had to be laid out a certain way and kept immaculate. Physically, it was a graduated physical regime. Building the muscle on you, building your stamina up, that type of thing. But we were well fed, and it was broken down into 10-week phases with about 2 weeks between each one on leave. So it was a year roughly I was at Bridge of Dawn for.
And was that training compressed or broken down because of your age?
Yes, because I was classed as a junior soldier. Instead of doing, I think it was 6 weeks. No, it wasn't 6 weeks. Was it? I can't remember. However long they did at Glencorse, but we did the full year of it. Our platoon commander must have been very friendly with the local RAF people, because they had a RAF radar station up at Peterhead, and they were doing a tactical evaluation exercise up there. And the platoon I was in, we were given the task of seeing if we could break into the camp, and that was including cutting the wire and all this stuff you see in the films. I thought, this is great fun, this. Yes, we were being taught how to do staying out in the field overnight. So it's called a harbour drill. And basically the platoon's in, and we've got all-round defence. And we have, through the wee hours of the morning, we have one person from each section on duty at any one time. And you do it on a rotating stag list, as they call it. Well, through the night, 4-2 Royal Marine Commando came charging through our location. So a very, very brief firefight between fully trained Royal Marine Commandos and junior soldiers. I'd like to think we put up a good defence.
But did you?
It was over in seconds.
Well, then you went on to join the Queens Own Highlanders. Can you tell us a bit about your time there?
Yeah, left Bridge of Dawn, joined the Queens Own Highlanders when they were based at Kirknewton. And when I joined the regiment, they were just starting off their training to go to Northern Ireland, to South Armagh. So they were actually on leave at the time. So we got there on the Monday morning, and I think it was a Monday morning we got there, and we're promptly sent off for a long weekend type thing. Which again I thought, hey, this is fantastic. And then we got back in and we were assigned our companies. So I went to 3 Platoon, A Company, 1 Queens Own Highlanders. And we went into doing the run up the training for deploying to Northern Ireland. And fresh out of training as I was given the light machine gun to carry, and the word light is optional. Yeah.
So, just tell us about your time in Northern Ireland then. If any sort of memorable experiences.
Absolutely hectic. Yeah. The 79 tour, we were out there when the bombing at Warren Point happened. We lost our commanding officer and his RADOP, along with all the paratroopers on that day. The same day, Mountbatten lost his life with some of the members of his family. And that was, if I wasn't already getting a wake-up call about reality, that certainly was the final wake-up call for reality. But that particular tour, we were doing 4 days rurals, patrolling the fields, basically, 4 days in the village, patrolling the village, and then 4 days on camp duty. So basically manning the sangers, and it was a rolling 4 days. And at the start of it, I wondered if I'd be able to survive it. It was just so physically demanding.
Queens Own Highlanders was infantry, right?
Yes, infantry. So
Can you talk a bit about what your expectations were like while you were over there and how that sort of impacted you in Northern Ireland?
Yeah, it's totally different job in Northern Ireland from doing the infantry role. Yes, you're carrying a rifle, you've got weapons, but it's not general warfare. We have rules of engagement in a wartime situation. The Geneva Conventions kick in, none of which applied in Northern Ireland. We were carrying, at times, our commanders certainly were carrying a big, thick book full of rules of engagement for different weapon systems. And the particular one for Northern Ireland, I'm not giving any secrets away here, everybody knows about it, was the yellow card, and that was our rules of engagement. The yellow card is rules of engagement for Northern Ireland. It's a white card in Scotland, and there's a different white card for England and Wales, different because of different legal systems. So there was a complete difference. But again, you went through you went through training before deploying, and there's ranges set up in the UK that teach you what you might see over there and how you should be reacting.
You spent some time travelling around. You were in Germany, Hong Kong, and South Korea. Can you talk a little bit about your time doing that and working in the UN Honour Guard? And for those who don't know what that is, can you explain that as well, please?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, after Northern Ireland in 79, it was back to Kirknewton, public duties in Edinburgh Castle, Christmas, New Year, and then getting ready to move out to Hong Kong. And we moved out in March 80 to Hong Kong. And whilst in Hong Kong, we were doing border patrols, stopping the illegal immigrants coming in. And then we also did our jungle warfare training in Brunei, which I thoroughly enjoyed, really did love it. And I was picked to go out to South Korea as a part of a composite platoon, United Nations Honour Guard, which is primarily ceremonial duty. You were also doing guards, guarding the command bunkers, that type of thing. But it's nothing like what the British Army were doing. We were sitting in a wee cabin, basically, and looking at people's ID cards, and we could order our McDonald's if we so choose. Yeah. So it was ceremonial parade every Friday afternoon. And then it was back to the barracks, get changed and barbecue, because the Americans really, really did look after us. Yeah, so UN Honor Guard, right. So it goes all the way back to the end of the Korean War, right? Well, it hasn't actually ended. It's the longest ceasefire in history. That's all that's in place there. It's a ceasefire. So you got North Korea, South Korea, and the UN is in on the border, what they call the DMZ, the Demilitarized Zone. They're in there, and you have got, at the time, on the north side of it, you had the Eastern Bloc countries doing their little bit of the UN. I remember meeting the Czech officer. He was a wonderful man. And on the south, there was British Army representation. Now, once a year, it was from the resident battalion in Hong Kong. The rest of the time, it would be the Gurkhas doing it. You had Filipinos, Thais, the Americans, and the Koreans themselves, South Koreans themselves. So it was keeping the UN presence in South Korea, because as long as the UN was still there, then they reckoned the North wouldn't try anything else. But going up towards the border is one of the strangest experiences I've ever had. And we did go up to the village where they signed the ceasefire. It's the one where Trump was photographed, with, the blue buildings. Going up there is absolutely amazing, because as you drive under the bridges, you can see that they're all set for demolition. Yeah, all the highway bridges, the flyovers, they're all set for demolition. You then go into a preset minefield, minefields off the road, and then, of course, you're into the demilitarized bit itself. And then it's all propaganda. The North Koreans at that point have a village on their side of it that's not occupied, but they have tannoys out, and it's playing the noise of life, basically. And they have the mannequins moving about on rails and stuff like that. And on the south side, there is people living up around there, and the perk of that is they don't have to do national service. Yeah, so the farmers are not keeping them there. But yeah, and the North Korean flagpole is slightly bigger, and the South Korean flag on their smaller flagpole is slightly bigger than the North Korean flag. It's all that type of stuff. And you're sitting there going, if it wasn't so heavily mined, it would be laughable. Yeah, so that's basically what the UN Honor Guard was at the time.
There are differences, though, aren't there, between being a peacekeeper and infantry? So what's the training differences like between those? Peacekeeper and infantry?
Absolutely, a totally different job. Completely. Yeah. So the difference between being trained for general warfare and specifically trained to do peacekeeping work is absolutely chalk and cheese. Different rules of engagement. With and I've done the peacekeeping role out in Bosnia, that the United Nations Protection Force. So yeah, you do get specific training in the British Army these days for peacekeeping duty. Back then, probably not, and that was the big downfall with sending combat troops in to do peacekeeping role. Because a riot is a terrible place to be in. Regardless of how much kit you've got with you, it is not a nice place to be in. And if you have combat soldiers there, well, they've only got one recourse, and that's live ammo. So yeah, it's a completely different situation, and the training now within the military, if the peacekeeping duty does come up, is actually very good. Yeah. I didn't get any for the 93 tour in Bosnia, but certainly my 96, 97 tour, I was fully involved with the training there, and it's absolutely fantastic.
I always say that necessity is the mother of invention. So what did you find in the medical training that you done that was it was sort of it happened by chance, but it was a lifesaver. You know, for example, in Vietnam, they said that super glue was one of the great things for saving lives. What did you find that was ad hoc repair service, but it did save lives?
By the time we got to, well, for Bosnia, for Northern Ireland as a medic, we were incredibly well kitted out. We had everything we needed. All that ad hoc stuff had been done. Yeah, and please, anybody watching, don't be using super glue at home to close wounds. The super glue you have in your bottom shelf is not the same super glue they use in the hospital. Okay. Right. So, so all of that had really been done, and even in Bosnia, the commander medical we had in Bosnia was doing an ongoing program of re-kitting us, and we ended up with belt order drop-down bags that he had kitted out, and with all the kit we needed for that immediate hands-on to the casualty. And then the first Gulf, again, we used to have big, what we call lake-on boxes, metal boxes full of kit, medical kit. And basically what happened one day, the doctor came in, emptied it and says, right, you guys, pack what you think you need, bin what you don't. Right, so me and this guy, John Bowie, again, working as a team, we sort of repacked it. And they came in, the doctors came in, they made a few tweaks with it, but they were basically happy with what it did. And then we got extra stuff put into it. So I've never actually had to do the improvisation because I've been fortunate enough that I've had the kit. Although I have colleagues and friends, very good friends of mine, who have improvised, for example, with the tourniquets. And that's the big thing now with what's been going on in Afghanistan and second Iraq. Tourniquets are now back in use, even though the people had forgotten how to use them basically, and whole urban myth had grown up about them. But now they are back in use, and we advise people who, for example, use chainsaws that they should be carrying one just in case it goes horribly wrong. So no, I've never actually been in that position. I've had to use black masking tape and Green Army string to hold bits of kit together, for sure, but no, I've never been in that position. And A Company, Queens Own Highlanders, were based at Goose Green, and it was we spent our time just trying to normalise things, tidying up the battlefield. Because our medics, regimental medics, were all the way in their Class 1 courses, I had done a Class 3 course. So I was in as company medic just for a brief couple of weeks till the boys got back down to us. However, during that, two of our boys reversed over an anti-tank mine. So that was my introduction to war casualties. Fortunately, and I'm always saying this, it's fortunate that our medical sergeant was in Goose Green at the time. I'm sure I would have done what I could have for the two boys, but I was so glad he was there. So that was another wake-up call in my career. But they both survived. Yeah, so much went right that day, and helicopters were close into us as well, and they came in and hovered on. We had to presume it was a minefield we were in, and they actually did a hover pickup of the guys, so they were just had their wheels. It was the old Wessex helicopters. They just had their wheels off just barely off the ground, but so it wouldn't trigger any more mines, basically. So yeah, they both boys lived. I am so glad that medical sergeant was there. I really am. Bit ironic. It was an Italian anti-tank mine. The boys were driving a captured Mercedes 4x4. Yeah, but fortunately they reversed over it as opposed to front wheel went over it. Otherwise, it would have been a different outcome.
So you eventually moved from the Queens Own Highlanders to the Royal Army Medical Corps, correct?
Yes.
How did that come about?
Right, yeah. Basically, I went from being in a rifle company, did a short stint as a regimental policeman, then went into a recce platoon, and I damaged my ankle. We sort of put the kebabers on things. And I was given options what I'd want to do in the regiment. And the regiments at the time were self-contained. It was all Queens Own Highlander cap badges did, just not all the jobs. So I had done that medical course prior to that. So one of the options I was given was the medical section. So I went into the medical section and was doing quite well in there. And then the Gulf kicked off in 90. And our regimental band, there's two bands in a Highland regiment, or in the Scottish regiments at the time. You had a regimental band, which all British Army units have, but you also then have the pipes and drums. So the pipes and drums, when they're no piping and drumming, do normal soldier work. Whereas the military band, when they're not doing the military band stuff, they are then classed as ambulance jockeys, medics. Right? And they were stood to, they were warned off that they were going to reinforce one armoured field ambulance who were deploying with 7th Brigade going out to the Gulf. They were one short. So the commanding officer asked for me, which I thought was really odd. I must admit, on the walk up from the med centre up to where the commanding officer's office was, I'd convinced myself that he was after a first aid kit. And this is what I convinced myself. And he then, I'd signed off. I was getting out at my 12-year point then. And he says, look, I know you've signed off, but the band's one short. I'd really like you to go, and then we'll pick up you getting out when you come back. I went, fine, I'll go. He goes, you got time to think about it? I goes, well, I'll do it. So went out with the military band, attached to one armoured field ambulance, and one of these strange quirks, although my wife doesn't think it's a quirk these days because I always seem to meet people I know. One of the corporals in the field ambulance was a guy who I used to work with in the med section in the Queens Own Highlanders. He'd gotten out the army and rejoined the RAMC and is now a corporal. So we teamed up straight away, and he was able to get me a fairly decent job within the field ambulance, working in the dressing station as opposed to working on the ambulances. And the pair of us really did sort of bounce off each other. We'd worked well before and we were working well again. And as a result of that, I think it was I'm almost sure it's the second day of the land war, the regimental sergeant major of the field ambulance asked me to transfer. Yeah, I thought, a bit busy at the moment, but so we came back from that, and the amalgamations were announced then. And the Queens Own Highlanders and the Gordon Highlanders were getting amalgamated, so there would have been, less opportunity to progress. So I took up the option of transfer.